So you've heard how I got my start and my love for baking, but the next part is how I actually got started. When I graduated high school, I went to Lincoln thinking, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna be a professional in something or another. Went to college for 2 semesters, summer and fall, and realized this isn't what I really want to be doing. I wanted to do something different, and I needed to get away from Nebraska to see more of what was out there, because I grew up in a small community. The farm, the closest town, only had 100 people in it, so I really needed to get out and broaden my horizons. So I went to New York City, and I was a nanny in Long Island for a family for a year, and I got to cook and bake and do whatever I wanted to do. I got to do for them while I took care of their little baby that was 6 weeks old. And after being a nanny for a year, I decided, you know what? I think I want a job in Manhattan. I was on Long Island as a nanny, and I would get to go to New York City on my days off and hang out with friends, different things like that. But I got a job a year later in Manhattan as a housekeeper and cook. And that was pretty fun. They had a 6-story brownstone, 10 bathrooms, 3 kitchens, all kinds of amazing things that I had never seen in my life. But they were seeing me as a servant. And the first family, they saw me as a family member, so there was definitely a different transition for me on that. But I would be allowed to cook sit-down dinners for up to 22 people. I learned how they were Orthodox Jew, so what I had to do was I had to learn to not cook meat and dairy together, different sets of plates and cooking utensils and all kinds of stuff that I'd never been experienced to in my life. And I found that I really enjoyed what I was doing, but I didn't like the idea that I was a servant. So that experience was about 8 months long, and I decided, you know what, I'm just gonna go out and I'm gonna get my own place in Manhattan. I'm going to get a job in the kitchen and just do what I love to do, which is bake and cook. So I got my place to live, and I went around to restaurants saying, will you hire me? I want to work in your kitchen. I can cook, I can bake, I can do dishes, I can prep, anything you want, I would love to do for you. And after getting many rejections on this, I finally said to a general manager, why can I not get a job in a kitchen? Like, I'm willing to do anything you put in front of me. Why can't I get a job? And he said, because you'd be very uncomfortable. And I said, why would I be uncomfortable? This is what I love to do. And he said, because it's an all-male kitchen that's non-English speaking. I'm like, so? Like, come on, bring it on, right? And he said, no. He said, I can't. And I said, well, so you're telling me because I'm a woman, I can't work in the kitchen? And this was back in the late 80s, and I had seen some known pastry chefs and chefs that were women that had started to come, into this profession. And I said, well, what about this person, or what about that person? Look at Julia Child, she's like mega famous, right? And he said, the only way that you can work in a kitchen is if you go to culinary school. No one's gonna hire you just off the street. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go to culinary school. So it wasn't like I wanted to bake and cook, but it wasn't the career that I thought would be my forever career. And I thought, but why not? If this is what I'm going to do to survive and to make a living, this is what I'll do. So I went to the Yellow Pages. Yes, we had the Yellow Pages back then. I opened up the Yellow Pages and I went to the culinary schools, and the first one I called, I got an answer machine. The second one I called, I actually got a live person, and I after the end of that conversation, I was enrolled in culinary school to start in 2 weeks. So culinary school is expensive, it's full-time, and I still had to have a way to support myself. So I started walking dogs for famous people like Yoko Ono, Michael J. Fox, Tracy Pollan, and I became a personal assistant for Paul Simon's ex-wife, Peggy Simon. Anything to survive, because that's really what it's about. Survival, wherever you are, you have to survive. And I started with these type of jobs. I cleaned houses, anything I could to put myself through culinary school. And after I finished a 6-month internship, part of the program was to go work for 6 months in a kitchen for free, about 50 hours a week. You worked as much as they told you to work. Now, that experience was kind of interesting because the school found me a place to go work. And I remember going into this French bakery all excited because I was going to learn how to make French pastries. And the French chef, he didn't want me there. He didn't want any interns there. The business was owned by a woman who really didn't want to be there. She was actually, she left the chef in charge, but she wanted us interns because we were free labor. And when the 6 months was up, we would be on our way. The French chef, he didn't want us there because we were wasting his time, because in 6 months we were gone and he had to bring in a new group that had no clue what they were doing. So the funny part about this, it wasn't so funny at the time, but the kind of a interesting factor on all of this is that he would have interns come in and he was so mean to them that they would leave, they would go to lunch, never come back, they'd work a day, not come back. And me being naive from here in Nebraska, I thought they were giving up on their careers and that if I wanted to work in the kitchen, this is what I had to do. For 6 weeks straight, he had me in tears because he was so mean and so brutal. The number of students that passed through those doors during that time, it was unbelievable. And one time that I remember that was so hard for me to understand was he said, I want you to make pastry cream. Now, in culinary school, we had done it, but we had a bain-marie, which is like a double boiler. And in the French bakery, you don't have all the utensils, you don't have everything that you might have in school, because school wants you to learn how to use these things, but the real life in a bakery is you make do with what you've got. So he says, I want you to make pastry cream. And I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to do this, right? Because the only fire he had was an old candy fire. It had these like rings of fire that were all on gas. So if I did it in a pot there, it was going to burn. I had seen him do it with a big metal bowl and he would just do it over the fire. But in school, we used a bain-marie, the double boiler. And I said, well, Chef John Claude, how would you like me to do this? Thinking, can I make a double boiler with a pot and a bowl? Or do you want me to use like the bowl and just beat over it? What do you want me to do? And he had a cast iron skillet in his hand and he conked me on top of the head right here and said, just do it. And what I realized in the midst of that was it isn't going to matter how I do it as long as I do it right. But I had to learn that. And what I did was I took the bowl and I did it the way I'd seen him do it. And when I did that, I made scrambled eggs. So the next batch that I made a double boiler from the pot and the bowl. And I made it and it came out just fine. It was perfect. And when I think about that and I think, just do it, he really didn't want me to do it his way or whatever. It was just do it and have it work. And I remember crying through that. I remember thinking, why am I here? What am I doing? And how is this ever going to work for me? But after that experience and 6 months of working with this incredible French chef, he became somebody that I really respected and looked up to. And at the end of the day, if we did what he wanted us to do, then we would get to have fun and do the things that we really wanted to learn, like how to make truffles, how to make nougatine boxes, how to work with mascarpone, things like that. And in 6 months, he made me his second chef, and I stayed with him for 2 years. And I remember thinking, okay, what can I do to make this a good day with him? So I would have to be there. It was on the edge of the Bronx. Just a little bit about this. This bakery was on the edge of the Bronx, and at 4:30 in the morning, I had to be there, ride a bus up there, right? On the corners around me. It wasn't uncommon to see a lady on the corner or see some different things going on. And I remember thinking, I've got to be invisible. And I've got to get this key and this gate, get the gate up, and then get it back down, turn around, unlock, get in, lock, disarm the alarm, all very quickly, and be as invisible as I possibly could. And then I would make coffee, because John Claude loved coffee, and I would put on Neil Diamond before he would get there, because those were the two things that he loved the most with his baking, of course. And if I did those few things, I might have a good day. So it was just showing him that I was there for him, and that yes, I wanted to learn from him, but I respected him as a person. And that really helped me kind of put things into perspective to get through that day. I feel like some of the things I learned from my grandmothers, it wasn't like I learned how to bake, but I really learned that you don't give up, because if you're baking something, you can't just stop in the middle and walk away from it and say, I'm done. Somebody else come along, clean this up, or somebody else come along and finish, because maybe it's fun to mix the batter, but it's not so fun to scoop the cookies out. Like, it depends on what part of the process you enjoy. And by learning that if I started something, I had to finish it, it was kind of the same when I went to work for Chef John Claude. I started this career, I went to school, I had to finish it, and I didn't know that I could have gotten another job as an intern somewhere else and maybe not had to deal with what he was putting me through at the time. But that time spent with him was probably one of the more important parts of my career, because it really helped me realize that if I wanted this, this was what I was going to have to deal with as a pastry chef or a baker in the culinary field.